Hi, I'm Rob from MicksGarage.com. Today we're going to show you how to change the spark plugs on your car. It's a really simple DIY job that anybody can try, and you just need a few basic hand tools. When you need to change your spark plugs varies from car to car. Your owner's manual or a Haynes manual like this will tell you what the interval should be. This particular car needs them changed every 25,000 miles. Spark plugs need to be changed because they basically wear out, like brake pads or tyres. Big difference being spark plugs are buried inside the engine and you can't see them wearing out. A spark plug works by sending a strong electrical current through the electrode gap here. This in turn then ignites the fuel in the cylinder. As a spark plug wears, the edges of the electrode get rounded off and the spark becomes weaker or non-existent. This can result in all kinds of problems for your engine: misfiring, loss of performance, loss of power and poor fuel economy. Before we start work on the engine, it's always a good idea to take a quick picture of the layout of all the cables and wires, just so you make sure you put everything back exactly where you found it. The vast majority of petrol engine cars on the road will have a fairly similar setup to this one here. It's an inline 4-cylinder engine with the spark plugs underneath these HT leads here. We're going to replace one plug at a time so we don't get the HT leads mixed up. It's very important that each one goes back onto the plug that it's supposed to be on. So you just need to pull this rubber cap off and pull it by the cap, not the lead. You just take that out and move it out of the way. You can see the spark plug buried right down inside the cylinder head here. Now we're ready to take the first plug out, and we're going to use a special spark plug socket. It's got a little rubber insert in there which grips the spark plug, so that when you've unscrewed it from the head, you can pull the plug out without dropping it on the floor. Because, as I mentioned, the plugs are buried quite deep inside the head on this twin cam engine, I need to use a long extension bar and a ratchet. The plug should come out of the head with fairly little resistance like this. You can do it by hand, and then we can just lift the plug straight out of the engine and it's still stuck in our spark plug socket here. You can tell an awful lot about the condition of your engine by looking at the spark plugs. This one looks in pretty good shape, or this cylinder anyway. It's got a nice light tan greyish colour to the electrode. A white finish, or a white colour to the electrode can mean that the engine's running too lean, or a dark black sooty finish can mean that it's running too rich, or there's oil getting into the combustion chamber. This is often referred to as plug fouling. What we're going to do is, when we've taken them all out, we'll lay all the 4 plugs out in line to see we've got a nice uniform colour on all of them, so that we know that all 4 cylinders are performing at the same kind of level. So we've got our new spark plug here. I checked before I bought it using the Haynes manual that the gap that I need for this particular car, this engine, is 1.3 millimeters, and this particular part comes pre-gapped to 1.3 mil, so I know that I don't need to do anything else to set it. You can buy a feeler gauge to check the gap on the spark plugs if you do need to set them. When you're putting the new plug in, just 3 very important things to make sure. Don't let anything drop down inside the cylinder bore. Secondly, make sure that you seat the plug correctly within the head. You don't want to cross thread the spark plug in the cylinder head. There should be no real resistance, and you should be able to tighten it up by hand like I'm doing here. Lastly, it's extremely important not to over tighten the plugs into the cylinder head. On this particular engine, the head is aluminium and the thread is tapered on the plug, and it's extremely easy to crack the cylinder head. So in the case of this car, it only needs to be tightened to 15 Newton meters, so you can use a torque wrench to make sure you don't over tighten them at all. I don't actually have a torque wrench which goes that low, so I'm just doing it by feel and from experience, and that is about it. No, I'm not even putting my hand on the end of the ratchet here to limit the amount of torque that I can apply to it. For the next 3 plugs, it's the exact same process. So these are our old plugs. As you can see, there's a nice uniform colour across all 4 of them, which means that there's nothing drastically untoward going on inside any of our 4 cylinders. The last thing to do is just check you've got all your HT leads well seated onto the plugs, and also just check the coil pack end as well, make sure they're all seated, nothing's come adrift. Take any tools out of the engine bay and then you can start the car. All the products featured in this video are available to buy online from MicksGarage.com.